A forged passport slides across a dimly lit table in wartime Lisbon. The man holding it has never set foot in England, yet German intelligence believes he commands 27 operatives across Britain, each operative feeding them secrets that could change the course of the war. But here's what the Germans don't know. None of these operatives exist. Every report, every piece of intelligence, every strategic detail comes from the imagination of one man sitting in a Portuguese hotel room with nothing but a tourist map and a railway timetable. While the Third Reich hangs on his every fabricated word, he's desperately trying to convince the British to let him become their spy. What drives a chicken farmer to orchestrate perhaps the most elaborate deception in military history? And how does a man with no training, no connections, and no resources convince two opposing intelligence services that he's exactly what they need? The story you're about to hear challenges everything you think you know about espionage. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You are not here by accident. Barcelona, 1939. The Spanish Civil War has left the country in ruins, and across Europe, a darker shadow begins to spread. Juan Pujol Garcia stands at his hotel window, watching smoke rise from buildings that once housed his dreams of prosperity. His movie theater ventures have collapsed. His engagement to a devout Catholic woman offers comfort but no passion. At 27, he seems destined for the quiet obscurity of provincial life. Yet something stirs within him as news of concentration camps and systematic oppression filters through the propaganda. The humanist convictions instilled by his father refuse to let him ignore what's happening beyond Spain's borders. But what can one man do against a machine of oppression that spans continents? Most would write letters to newspapers or join political movements. Juan Pujol Garcia decides to start a personal war with the most powerful man in Europe. 3 times he approaches the British embassy in Madrid. 3 times they turn him away. An eccentric Spanish chicken farmer who barely speaks English doesn't fit their recruitment profile. Spain maintains official neutrality, and MI5 doesn't want complications. But Pujol's rejection sparks a dangerous idea. If the British won't accept him as an ally, perhaps the Germans will accept him as an enemy. The telephone rings at the German embassy in Madrid. The voice on the other end speaks with rehearsed conviction about Hitler's vision for Europe, about devotion to the new order. Juan Pujol has spent weeks immersing himself in propaganda, learning to speak their language to mirror their beliefs. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, is desperate. Their networks in Britain have been compromised, their agents turned or captured. When this enthusiastic Spanish businessman calls offering his services, they're intrigued enough to arrange a meeting. Café Leon, 4:30 in the afternoon. A fair-haired man introduces himself as Federico. This will become Pujol's lifeline to German intelligence and his pathway to the most audacious double-cross in espionage history. Federico sees diplomatic connections and business acumen. What he doesn't see is the elaborate fiction Pujol is constructing in real time. Every confident assertion about his network, every casual mention of his influence, pure invention delivered with the conviction of a master actor. The Germans christen him Agent Arabelle, meaning answered prayer. The irony will prove more profound than they could imagine. Lisbon, April 1941. Pujol sits in his hotel room, staring at a tourist map of England. He's supposed to be in London, building a spy network. Instead, he's about to launch the most ambitious intelligence fraud in modern history from a Portuguese hotel room. His first telegram to Madrid reads like a masterpiece of espionage reporting. He's allegedly met a Dutch airline pilot who will courier his letters, explaining the Portuguese postmarks. He's already recruiting his first sub-agents across Britain. The level of detail is staggering. Addresses, cover stories, communication protocols. None of it exists. Armed with nothing but a railway timetable and his vivid imagination, Pujol begins crafting an intelligence network that will eventually span 27 fictional operatives. Each has a detailed backstory, unique personality, and specific area of expertise. There's William Gerbers, the traveling salesman, an Indian poet with access to military installations, a government clerk in the Ministry of War. The creation process becomes almost obsessive. Agent 3 operates from Glasgow as a Scottish nationalist sympathizer who can move freely through military areas. Agent 4 works as a waiter in expensive restaurants where military officers dine and drink too much. Agent 7, supposedly a former Royal Air Force officer, now runs a small farm in Kent with perfect visibility of aircraft movements. Each fictional operative has personal quirks, political motivations, financial needs. Pujol invents romantic relationships, family troubles, health problems. When Agent 2 falls ill, Pujol creates detailed medical reports. When Agent 5 needs money for his sick mother, elaborate financial justifications follow. The Germans eat it up. His bombastic reports, filled with patriotic fervor and tactical observations, convince them they've discovered a goldmine of British intelligence. What they don't realize is that every vivid detail springs from one man's theatrical imagination, trained during childhood daydreams and refined through years of failed business ventures. But Pujol knows he's walking a tightrope. Every fabricated report brings him closer to exposure. Every invented detail must align with the next. One mistake, one inconsistency, and the entire elaborate fiction collapses. October 1941. Pujol sends word that his sub-agent has spotted 5 British ships leaving Liverpool for Malta. It's complete fabrication, but the Germans redirect aircraft and naval forces to defend against an attack that will never come. Resources wasted, strategic positions abandoned, all because of intelligence that exists only in one man's imagination. Another report follows. A major British fleet departing Wales. German U-boats and Italian planes scramble to intercept the Phantom Armada. More resources diverted, more strategic confusion sown in the German command structure. But Federico is getting impatient. The intelligence is interesting, but where are the real strategic advantages? He wants details about new expeditionary forces, recruitment of agents in Northern Ireland, specific military documents. The pressure is mounting. Pujol realizes his elaborate fiction is becoming a trap. The more successful he appears, the more the Germans expect. And he's making mistakes, writing about men from Glasgow craving wine instead of whiskey, confused references to British currency, small errors that could expose everything. Meanwhile, his money is running out. The initial $3,000 has dwindled to barely enough for basic survival. For the 5th time, he approaches a British consulate, desperately offering his services as a double agent. For the 5th time, he's refused. Sometimes salvation comes from unexpected quarters. Pujol's wife, Araceli, takes matters into her own hands. She convinces an acquaintance to write what appears to be an innocent note in French, then transforms it using invisible ink into what looks like crucial intelligence about a sabotage plot. She marches into the American embassy and presents this fabricated intelligence to the naval attaché, claiming her husband is the source. It's a desperate gambit, but it works. Finally, British intelligence takes notice. Meanwhile, MI6 has been intercepting and deciphering telegrams from a mysterious agent Arabelle to the Abwehr in Madrid. The reports are so detailed, so convincing, that they assume they're dealing with a genuine German spy. The problem? The intelligence is often wildly inaccurate, sometimes completely absurd. Yet the Germans are responding as if it's genuine, diverting major military resources based on these reports. British intelligence is baffled. Who is this phantom operative, and why are the Germans hanging on his every word? When they finally connect Juan Pujol to Agent Arabelle, the pieces fall into place. This isn't enemy infiltration. It's the most elaborate deception operation they've ever encountered. April 1942. Pujol secretly boards a British merchant ship bound for the United Kingdom. His war is about to begin in earnest. North London's safe house. Tommy Harris, Pujol's future case officer, conducts the debriefing with professional skepticism. Is this Spanish chicken farmer really the mastermind behind the intelligence reports that have been confounding German command? Or is this an elaborate German ploy, a triple agent designed to penetrate British intelligence? Harris himself presents an intriguing paradox. Born to a Spanish mother and British father, he speaks perfect Spanish and understands the cultural nuances that make Pujol's deception so compelling. An art dealer before the war, Harris possesses the same creative imagination that allows him to appreciate Pujol's fictional masterpiece. But there are whispers within MI5 about Harris's own loyalties. His social circle includes figures who will later be exposed as Soviet operatives. Some colleagues suspect he may be playing a deeper game than anyone realizes. Yet his partnership with Pujol will produce the most successful deception operation in espionage history. Pujol spins a story about his brother witnessing Gestapo atrocities in France, claiming this drove his anti-German sentiment. It's a lie. His brother never left Spain. But it's a lie that serves a greater truth about his motivations. The evaluation process reveals fascinating details about Pujol's psychological profile. MI5 psychologists note his ability to compartmentalize elaborate fictional constructs while maintaining emotional stability. His reports show signs of genuine literary talent, with character development and narrative consistency that rivals professional fiction writers. After careful evaluation, British intelligence makes their decision. Juan Pujol Garcia is recruited into MI5 and given the code name that will become legendary, Agent Garbo, after the actress known for her masterful performances. What MI5 doesn't initially realize is that they're not just recruiting a single agent. They're acquiring an entire fictional universe populated by 27 distinct personalities, each with their own operational history and established credibility with German intelligence. Welcome to the double-cross system, where captured German agents are turned into unwitting tools of Allied deception. But Garbo represents something unprecedented, a self-made double agent who created his own network of fictional operatives. The transition brings relief. No more inventing intelligence from tourist guides and newspaper clippings. Now he has access to real information, carefully selected by British intelligence to serve their strategic objectives. But the game becomes more complex. His fictional network must continue growing. Their personalities must remain consistent, and their intelligence must be valuable enough to maintain German interest without compromising Allied operations. November 1942. Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa, presents Garbo with his greatest challenge yet. British intelligence has devised an audacious plan that could destroy his credibility or cement his position as Germany's most valuable asset. Garbo will leak the true details of Operation Torch to the Germans. every detail, every target, every timing element. The catch? His letter will arrive one day too late. The operation requires precise coordination between MI5's Postal Censorship Division and their psychological warfare experts. The letter must be delayed without appearing deliberately sabotaged. British censors create a paper trail showing routine processing delays, complete with authentic bureaucratic inefficiency. Meanwhile, Garbo's fictional network expands with calculated precision. Agent J3, supposedly a high-ranking official in the Ministry of Information, provides the kind of inside intelligence that makes German handlers salivate. Agent 74, a military communications officer, offers technical details about Allied radio frequencies and encryption methods. Each fictional operative requires careful management. When Agent 2 reports illness, MI5 creates medical documentation in government files. When Agent 5's mythical mother requires expensive treatment, financial records reflect money transfers that never occurred but leave authentic paper trails. The psychological sophistication of these deceptions astounds German intelligence analysts. They're not just receiving reports. They're witnessing the complex personal lives of dedicated operatives risking everything for the Reich. November 1st, Garbo types his warning about Allied forces planning to attack Algeria and Casablanca. The letter is dated and postmarked, creating undeniable proof of when the intelligence was sent. But British censors ensure the letter moves through the system with deliberate delays. November 8th, Allied forces storm the beaches across Morocco and Algeria. November 9th, Federico holds Garbo's letter in his hands. Accurate intelligence that arrived just hours too late. The psychological impact on German command exceeds all expectations. They don't just believe Garbo's intelligence is genuine, they're convinced he possesses prophetic abilities. Internal German communications, later intercepted by British codebreakers, reveal that senior officers refer to Agent Arabelle as their oracle and compare his value to entire army divisions. The Germans are convinced. Their Agent Arabelle truly is as valuable as a 45,000-man army. They apologize for the postal delays and send more invisible ink, new ciphers, increased funding. But the most significant development is the establishment of direct radio communication. The Germans provide Garbo with sophisticated wireless equipment, allowing real-time intelligence transmission. This technological upgrade will prove crucial for the upcoming D-Day deception. Success in espionage doesn't translate to domestic harmony. Araceli finds herself isolated in wartime London, separated from her husband, who spends long days and nights at MI5 headquarters. The bland British diet, the restricted freedoms, the constant surveillance, it all becomes unbearable. What compounds the situation is the psychological toll of living within layers of deception. Araceli knows her husband's work involves elaborate lies told to dangerous people, but she doesn't understand the full scope of his fictional universe. The stress of maintaining operational security while managing a marriage proves nearly impossible. By 1943, her dissatisfaction has evolved into dangerous instability. She threatens to expose everything to the Spanish embassy unless she's allowed to return home immediately. Her outbursts occur at the worst possible moment, just as preparations for the D-Day deception reach critical intensity. MI5 surveillance reports reveal disturbing details about Araceli's mental state. She's been seen approaching government buildings, attempting conversations with officials, asking suspicious questions about her husband's work. The security risk becomes too significant to ignore. The stakes are too high. Her threats echo all the way to Winston Churchill's desk. Internal MI5 memoranda, only declassified decades later, reveal that Churchill personally authorizes whatever measures necessary to prevent Garbo's exposure. What follows is perhaps the most elaborate domestic deception in espionage history. MI5 stages Pujol's arrest, complete with an agent collecting pajamas and a toothbrush. They tell Araceli her threats have caused his deactivation, that his angry response led to assault charges. The psychological manipulation extends beyond simple theater. MI5 brings in psychiatrists to analyze Araceli's responses, tailoring their deception to her specific emotional vulnerabilities. They exploit her guilt, her love for her husband, her fear of responsibility for his downfall. When she still won't cooperate, they stage her apparent attempt to take her own life by gas, rushing her to Camp 20, an interrogation center for captured German agents. The facility, normally reserved for hardened enemy operatives, becomes the setting for this twisted family drama. There she has a brief meeting with her husband, dressed in prisoner's clothes, before being told to await news of his fate. The staged reunion includes authentic details: prison uniforms borrowed from actual facilities, guards briefed on maintaining the illusion, even forged legal documents suggesting impending prosecution. The ruse works, but at tremendous psychological cost. Araceli's mental health never fully recovers from the trauma of believing she destroyed her husband's life and nearly caused his imprisonment. Pujol returns home the next day, claiming the British have shown mercy and will allow him to continue his work if there's no more trouble. The incident leaves deep scars. Pujol never speaks of it again, but the foundation of his personal life has cracked irreparably. Internal MI5 reports note that Garbo's operational effectiveness actually improves following this crisis, as if the personal trauma sharpens his focus on professional deception. The man who excels at lying to enemies has learned to lie convincingly to those he loves most. 1944. The English countryside transforms into a massive stage set. Operation Fortitude represents the most ambitious deception operation in military history, and Agent Garbo will play the starring role. The challenge: convince German command that the Allied invasion will strike at Pas de Calais, 200 miles north of the actual target at Normandy. Garbo's fictional network expands to report on the 1st United States Army Group, a phantom million-man army supposedly gathering in southeastern England. His sub-agents dispatch detailed reports on inflatable tanks, dummy wooden aircraft, fake hospitals, even a sham oil facility near Dover, complete with wind machines borrowed from film studios. General George Patton himself is seen rallying these imaginary forces, lending credibility to the grandest military theater production ever staged. For months, the deception works perfectly. Hitler focuses defensive preparations on Pas de Calais, convinced this is where the real invasion will come. But as D-Day approaches, German intelligence begins showing increased interest in Normandy and Brittany. The deception must intensify. June 6, 1944. Allied forces storm the beaches of Normandy while German defenders, caught off guard by the poor weather conditions, struggle to respond effectively. The night before D-Day, Garbo had transmitted his most crucial message yet. Using the radio equipment provided by German intelligence, he sent a lengthy transmission beginning at 3 in the morning. The message detailed massive troop movements toward the Normandy coast, genuine intelligence that would normally trigger immediate German response. But the message was timed with surgical precision. It arrived too late to prevent the landings, but early enough to maintain Garbo's credibility. German radio operators recorded receiving the transmission, creating documented proof that their star agent had indeed provided advance warning. Even as thousands of Allied troops pour onto Omaha Beach, German high command hesitates. They refuse to wake Hitler from his sleep, convinced the real assault by a much larger force will still come at Pas de Calais. The psychological conditioning created by months of Garbo's reports proves more powerful than the evidence unfolding on Norman beaches. For 2 days following D-Day, German forces remain paralyzed by indecision, waiting for an attack from the non-existent Fusag and the opening of what they believe will be the real Second Front. June 9th brings the crucial moment. Desperate German commanders finally convince Hitler to deploy his fearsome panzer divisions toward Normandy. But Garbo transmits one final masterstroke, a 3-hour radio marathon beginning before dawn, the longest single transmission in the entire operation. The message weaves together reports from his entire fictional network. Agent 3 in Scotland observes massive troop buildups. Agent 7 in Kent reports increased aircraft activity pointing toward Pas de Calais. Agent J5, supposedly embedded in the American 1st Army Group headquarters, provides detailed organizational charts and invasion timetables. The cumulative effect overwhelms German intelligence analysts. Faced with such comprehensive reporting from multiple independent sources, they conclude the Normandy landing must indeed be a diversion. This message reaches Hitler's desk and demonstrates the absolute faith Germans have placed in their star agent. Hitler halts his armored divisions en route to Normandy, convinced that committing them would leave Pas de Calais vulnerable to the main assault. The tide of invasion shifts in that moment. Countless Allied lives are saved. The strategic foothold in Europe is secured. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect is what happens after D-Day. While other deception operations typically collapse once reality contradicts the fiction, Garbo's network continues operating. His fictional agents provide plausible explanations for why the main attack hasn't materialized yet. Weather delays, supply complications, strategic reassessments. Even by December, 22 German divisions still linger at Pas de Calais, waiting for Fusag's phantom assault. There are actually more forces there after D-Day than before the invasion began. German commanders, having invested so much credibility in Garbo's intelligence, find it psychologically impossible to admit they've been deceived. July 29, 1944. In a twist of irony that captures the entire absurdity of his situation, Pujol receives notification from the Abwehr that he will be awarded the Iron Cross, Germany's highest military honor, usually reserved for frontline soldiers. The award requires personal authorization from Hitler himself, transmitted via radio in a ceremony that exists only in the electromagnetic spectrum. Shortly before Christmas, Britain honors him in a secret ceremony as a member of the Order of the British Empire, presented by King George VI in a private audience that remains classified for decades. Juan Pujol Garcia becomes the only individual decorated by both sides in World War II, a distinction that will never be repeated in military history. But Garbo's work isn't finished. His fictional network continues operating through the final year of the war, providing crucial assistance in Allied deception operations beyond D-Day. When German V-1 rockets begin targeting London, Garbo's agents provide false intelligence about impact locations, causing subsequent missiles to miss their intended targets by significant margins. The V-1 deception operation reveals another layer of Garbo's sophisticated methods. His fictional agents report civilian casualties and infrastructure damage in areas where no rockets actually landed, while remaining silent about successful hits. German targeting calculations, based on Garbo's false damage assessments, gradually shift bombardment patterns away from critical military and governmental installations. Agent Garbo continues communicating with the Germans until the very end, sending his final message on May 8, 1945, as jubilant crowds pour onto London's streets. He tells them he's fleeing to South America as Soviet forces approach Berlin and the Reich collapses. The deception holds even in defeat. When Pujol travels to Madrid after the war and meets with former Abwehr members, including his old handler Federico, their warm reception and substantial reward payments prove his cover remained intact until the final moments. Federico, now revealed to be Colonel Karl Erich Kuhlenthal, actually recommends Pujol for additional honors and suggests he consider working for emerging intelligence services in the post-war landscape. The depth of German faith in their fictional agent remains unshaken even after their defeat. Internal German intelligence documents, captured by Allied forces, reveal that Abwehr officials considered Agent Arabelle more valuable than entire military divisions. Some reports suggest German strategic planning relied so heavily on Garbo's intelligence that alternative information sources were systematically discounted when they contradicted his reports. The final irony: German intelligence officers, facing post-war interrogation by Allied forces, actually defend Garbo's reliability and express confusion about how such a trusted source could have been compromised. They never realized they were defending a fictional creation. Venezuela offers Pujol the quiet life he craves after years of living elaborate lies. He teaches English to Shell Oil Company employees, opens a stationery shop, remarries, and has more children. But the cost of his wartime deceptions extends beyond Germany's defeat. His marriage to Araceli cannot survive the secrets and separations. She returns to Spain with their children in 1948, carrying psychological scars from the traumatic MI5 operations that convinced her of her husband's imprisonment. To protect him from possible reprisals, MI5 spreads rumors that Pujol has passed away in Angola after contracting malaria. The deception operation includes forged medical records, fabricated witness accounts, and even planted obituary notices in Spanish newspapers. Even his own family believes he's gone, mourning a husband and father who is very much alive but living under deep cover thousands of miles away. Araceli never remarries, maintaining that she's a widow for the rest of her life. For 3 decades, Juan Pujol lives peacefully in Venezuela, far removed from the danger and intrigue that once defined his existence. But he maintains certain operational habits from his espionage years, changing residences periodically, using different names for various activities, maintaining multiple bank accounts under assumed identities. Local Venezuelan authorities occasionally receive reports about this mysterious Spanish immigrant who seems to have unlimited financial resources despite running a modest stationery shop. Some suspect involvement in international business dealings. Others wonder about possible connections to political organizations. The truth is simultaneously more mundane and more extraordinary. Pujol receives periodic payments from British intelligence, not as active compensation, but as pension benefits for services rendered. These modest sums, managed carefully over decades, provide the financial security that allows him to maintain his anonymous lifestyle. During the 1960s and 70s, as former intelligence operatives begin publishing memoirs and histories of wartime operations, Pujol occasionally recognizes references to Agent Garbo in books and articles. He never contacts publishers or authors, maintaining the discipline of operational security even in peaceful retirement. But perhaps the most poignant aspect of his Venezuelan exile is the correspondence he never sends. Among his personal papers, discovered after his passing, are dozens of unfinished letters to his children in Spain, expressions of love, regret, explanation that could never be mailed without compromising the fiction of his passing. 40 years after D-Day, Intelligence historian Nigel West tracks down the legendary Agent Garbo in South America. The discovery process itself reads like a spy thriller. West following paper trails through Venezuelan business registries, interviewing elderly Shell Oil Company employees, gradually reconstructing Pujol's post-war identity. When West finally locates Pujol in Caracas, the initial meeting is tense. Pujol, now in his 70s, still maintains the operational caution that kept him alive during wartime. He demands proof of West's credentials, verification of his research purposes, assurance that no hostile intelligence services are involved. Reluctantly, believing enough time has passed that any remaining enemies are either too old or gone, Pujol agrees to return to England. The decision represents enormous psychological risk, breaking cover after 4 decades of carefully maintained anonymity. The Duke of Edinburgh formally presents him with his MBE in a public ceremony that attracts international media attention. For the first time since 1945, Agent Garbo steps into the spotlight, no longer hidden behind layers of deception and fictional identities. At Omaha Beach, surrounded by veterans and visitors commemorating the 40th anniversary of D-Day, the diminutive Spaniard is celebrated as a hero by many of those he helped save decades earlier. Some veterans approach him with tears, claiming his deception operations saved their units from German counterattacks that never materialized. But the emotional highlight occurs when former MI5 officers, now elderly themselves, reunite with their star agent. Tommy Harris had passed away years earlier under mysterious circumstances. Some suggest his connections to suspected Soviet operatives ultimately compromised his position. But other members of the double-cross system attend the commemoration. News of his survival spreads to Spain, shocking his long-lost family, who discover their husband and father did not pass away in Angola, but has been living quietly in South America all along. The Spanish media treats the revelation as a national sensation, with newspapers running headline stories about the spy who came back from the dead. A poignant reunion at Barcelona's Hotel Majestic, the same hotel where he once worked as manager during his failed business ventures, brings together a family separated by decades of necessary deception. His children, now middle-aged adults with families of their own, struggle to reconcile the father they mourned with the international war hero standing before them. The reunion includes painful conversations about lost decades, missed birthdays, grandchildren he never knew existed. Araceli, now an elderly widow who never remarried, faces perhaps the most complex emotional challenge. The man she believed was imprisoned and lost because of her threats during the war is revealed as one of history's most successful intelligence operatives. The guilt she carried for decades suddenly transforms into pride, mixed with profound sadness for the life they might have shared. Juan Pujol Garcia passes away on October 10, 1988, buried in a Venezuelan national park cemetery under a simple tombstone reading, "Remembered by his wife, children, and grandchildren." His funeral attracts an unusual mixture of mourners: Venezuelan neighbors who knew him as a quiet shopkeeper, former intelligence officers who flew from Europe to honor their colleague, family members from Spain still processing the complex legacy of his wartime service. While the Allied victory cannot be attributed to any single individual, there's no calculating the number of servicemen and civilians whose lives were saved by Juan Pujol's actions. Military historians estimate his deception operations may have prevented thousands of casualties during D-Day alone, while his post-landing intelligence helped secure the beachhead that ultimately led to European liberation. History remembers him as the most successful double agent ever, the spy who defeated a regime through nothing more than imagination, determination, and an unwavering belief that one person could make a difference in humanity's darkest hour. Agent Garbo proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon against tyranny isn't violence or technology. It's the simple human capacity to create compelling fiction and make others believe in something that exists only in the mind of one determined individual. But perhaps the ultimate irony of Pujol's legacy lies in what happened to his fictional creations after the war. While he faded into Venezuelan anonymity, his 27 imaginary agents achieved a strange form of immortality in intelligence archives. German files, captured by Allied forces, contain thousands of pages documenting the activities, personalities, and achievements of people who never existed. Modern intelligence historians studying these archives sometimes find themselves momentarily forgetting that Agent 3, the Scottish nationalist, or Agent 7, the Royal Air Force veteran turned farmer, were products of pure imagination. The psychological profiles are so detailed, the operational histories so convincing, that these fictional characters feel more real than many actual historical figures. In intelligence training schools today, Pujol's methods are studied as masterclasses in psychological manipulation and operational deception. His techniques for creating believable fictional identities, maintaining consistent personalities across extended operations, and exploiting cognitive biases in enemy analysis have become foundational elements of modern espionage education. The man who began his war as a failed chicken farmer and ended it as history's most decorated double agent left behind more than just a remarkable personal story. He demonstrated that in the realm of intelligence warfare, creativity and imagination can prove more valuable than weapons and technology. Juan Pujol Garcia's greatest creation wasn't any single fictional agent. It was the proof that one individual, armed with nothing more than determination and an exceptional imagination, could alter the course of human history. In an age when technology dominates warfare and espionage, his legacy reminds us that the human mind remains the most powerful weapon of all. In the end, perhaps that's the most remarkable truth of all. A chicken farmer's imagination helped change the course of world history, demonstrating that the greatest victories sometimes come not from what we destroy, but from what we create.